And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. We've got a lot of things to cover today. We're going to try to blast through as quickly as possible to keep the video as short and as dense as possible. Hopefully like the brains of our viewers, which isn't to say our viewers are dense, but to say that our brains are dense, which is what you want. In any case, we're looking at the sun here in 304 angstroms, confirming that there is a coronal mass ejection mixed into there coming out of the north, directly toward the observer. Well, not really directly toward the observer. It's actually off to your west. We'll show you all about it, as well as all kinds of other stuff on today's Sunday edition of the Daily Space Weather. Here's the coronal mass ejection that I forecasted yesterday. And you can't be right all the time, but if you're right as often as I am, it's a statistically insignificant portion of the time that I am wrong. And you can see we're expecting to miss the Earth to the west, and that came out north of the solar equator. We'll show you the view from stereo A. Here's the other view from the SOHO. This is the LASCO C3. So while the Earth is headed toward that, it's a decent speed coronal mass ejection, and we expect it to miss by quite a great distance to the west. Next, looking at HelioViewer here, showing you the scale of how small the Earth is compared to one of these coronal mass ejections. You can see, as I zoom in there, how large the scale of these giant clouds of primarily hydrogen nuclei are. And we're here to show you the fields, as well as the fact that we've got a significant sunspot most likely rising there. Plain old plages typically don't produce that level of magnetic looping, and we've got close-up videos of that as well. Here are the fields for the Earth-facing portion, and sunspot 2767 has upgraded to a beta class. The trailing umbra have now appeared. They are of opposite polarity. It remains cycle 25 behavior. Here is the 304 angstroms view, and yes, if you're wondering, I've gone to the Ben Shapiro School of Fast Talking. Here's the view from stereo A. This is the coronal mass ejection that I forecasted yesterday, as yesterday's Daily Space Weather video happened a little bit before it was fully released. By the way, if you haven't checked out our websites, they are tasty. smAshomash.com/forum. Highly nutritious. Visit our sites. I do. Are they grape flavored? You'll have to find out yourself. New tiers over at Patreon. We put up a yummy post to all patrons last night about how much lightning was striking. And let's get back to data. Here's a custom HelioViewer video that we made here, and it's not particularly showing the coronal mass ejection that we thought it would. It's a very tight time frame. I think you can see the trailing end of it there. And here's the view of sunspot 2767. So this is a great one. And again, if you see this trailing bright region right here, that is a North Pole polarity umbra underneath there. So this is now a beta class sunspot, and although the leading umbra has shrunk, the fact that there's now a trailing umbra of opposite polarity means there is an increased probability of solar flares and coronal mass ejections. Next, looking at this rising active region, which is super exciting. It's most likely more cycle 25 behavior, especially considering at how high of a latitude it is. Probably something like 50 or 55 degrees latitude there, I think. I won't conjecture as I'm not using a protractor. Also a good view of the North Solar Polar Field. And we've been snapping back and forth for days between different polarity current sheets. And we'll show you the animation of that after the smAsh lights section. 10.7 centimeter radial flux is still at 60, and I've now expanded this to go all the way back into 2014. The last time we saw values above 150 solar flux units. Again, we're at 70 right now. just coming off of the solar minimum. KP index has gone back up into geomagnetic unrest and come back down. It looks like another secondary coronal mass ejection strike at the same time as insufficiencies in the current sheet. In other words, the Earth was kind of between the North and South Pole current sheets over the past 3 days or so, repeatedly snapping back and forth, creating all kinds of magnetic anomalies. And this area of unrest that happened last night, I was not even aware of this until I did the daily space weather show prep. And once again, that's associated with probably a small bit of ejecta, and there is a signature on the real-time solar wind about that. So looking at the GOES X-ray flux, we don't see any flaring, but again, the likelihood of increased flaring has now gone up a bit, as again we have a beta-class sunspot, sunspot 2767. So it's a sunnier day than it was just a week ago, and there's the GOES proton flux. No significant blips in that, as the coronal mass ejection strikes have been relatively light and weak and slow. Here's the real-time solar wind that we're talking about, and you see that geomagnetic unrest happened right at this point. And what's relevant about that point is we see the solar wind density jump up and the speed jump up, a surefire signature of a coronal mass ejection. And this is a very small bit of ejecta apparently. We also see the phi angle shifting around at that moment and the BT/BZ shifting. So that's a real signal once again. And it's like, this time it's a signal of colder plasma. Perhaps because it was the trailing edge of the coronal mass ejection, who knows? But we saw bubble-like spikes during the previous bit of ejecta. And keep in mind that was occurring during a coronal hole wind stream, which masked the signal a little bit. And anyway, there you go. Current phi angle is around 340 degrees. BT/BZ is pretty convergent on the zero line here, fairly uneventful. Solar wind density has dropped back off of a cliff, and I would expect to see electron warning levels today. So expect your GPSs to be a little malfunctioning there around, especially around noon, around the equator. And we could see some fairly significant satellite charging hazards as well. Solar wind speed currently 388 kilometers a second. And here's what we're talking about with the very diffuse solar wind. And these models are courtesy University of Michigan, by the way, for you new viewers out there, showing us the density in terms of protons per cubic centimeter of the incoming solar wind, as well as the magnetosphere, the area surrounding the Earth. And you can see that light-colored diffuse solar wind coming in from the left of your screen. Keep in mind, dark colors on this show high density. Next, looking at pressure. This is a little bit less counterintuitive, I suppose, which is why we typically always show this one. Let me rewind that. That's 4 hours of data, and you can see the weak magnetosphere is fairly symmetrical right now. We don't see a particular difference in pressure between the bow shock and the magnetotail. So everything's fairly homogeneous right now, according to the Geospace Model V1.5, based on a space weather modeling framework. And this is probably going to continue to weaken throughout the day, so if you want to see this just fall away and have very, very low pressure, feel free. It's Geospace Magnetosphere movies. Next, looking at ground magnetic perturbations, and we don't see very many as there's not a lot of solar wind induction. And we are now solidly in the north solar polar current sheet, the portion of the heliospheric current sheet charged up by the north solar polar field. Anyway, there's 4 hours of data on that. We don't see many perturbations during this polar excursion. And welcome once again to another Smash Lights section. Where the flames burn, the world turns. We hope people learn, and we say whatever we want. Possibly even including some sick burns. So please consider funding us. And by the way, funding us is tasty. Is it grape flavored at smAsho.org? Well, you'll have to go find out for yourself. Let's talk about some Zero Hedge articles. The first one on the list is some black militia members accidentally shot some people in the park. I'm not sure where that was. In Seattle, yes. So Seattle and Portland are two cities where you may want to not consider going on vacation. Perhaps head to the Lehigh Valley and have a cycling vacation, as the Lehigh Valley, where I'm located, is one of the most significant, if not the most significant, cycling community in the entire world. And if you're from Belgium or Germany or Italy or the Netherlands or whatever, and you disagree with me, please leave a comment. Tell your friends, tell your foes, tell your science noobs, and tell your science pros that the Lehigh Valley is one of the top places to go, and Portland and Seattle are a horrific place to go if you want to ride your bike. Now, it depends on what you wear. If you wear a BLM shirt, you'll be fine riding your bike in these cities. If you wear a MAGA hat, you will be decapitated, and people will eat you in postage stamp sized cups. They will cut you into pieces, tiny pieces, postage stamp size, and they'll put you in a glass box, and place you on their mantle. Anyway, there's been some issues regarding people protesting, whether it's lockdowns by the government, or whether it's police brutality, or whether it's systemic racism, or whether it's just idiots going out and burning buildings and smashing windows because they're mad at life and their life sucks, and they don't realize that the best revenge is living well. Speaking about the best revenge on your local public officials is to audit them. Now, for example, one of the public officials where I'm located is called Ed Pawlowski. He definitely reached some famous levels of infamy when he went to jail for 49 years. Now, he was the mayor of Allentown, and guess what? He was involved in all sorts of pay-to-play schemes where the government just hired contractors without any bidding, which means the contractors could charge whatever they wanted. And let's just say it's a problem when public officials are wasting your taxpayer dollars with complete incompetence. Please leave us a comment. If any of your local officials have demonstrated complete and utter incompetence, please leave us a comment if you've noticed that my forecast for the year 2020 came 100% true. So not to say I told you so, but I told you so last year that 2020 would be a year of clarity. And what do I mean by that? Well, I didn't know what I meant by that, but I said it because I understood it to be true. How? I have no idea. Was it skill, talent, and training, or divine providence, or psychic powers? I don't know, and I don't particularly care. Have you noticed that every complete moron, idiot, douchebag, COVID-idiot, mentally handicapped person disguised as a person with a 100 IQ have just come out of the woodwork and said, look at me, I'm a complete COVID-idiot. Look at me, I know less about every branch of science than you do, but I want to give you advice on whether you should stay home, or whether you should wear a mask, or whether I'm a utterly incompetent government official or only a marginally incompetent government official. Now that I got that out of my system, if you notice problems with your government officials, make sure that they get an
audit,
which is a formal examination of an organization or individual's accounts or financial situation. Because if they're taking kickbacks from their contractors, it's going to be a problem for them, because they're creating a paper trail, aren't they? Now, perhaps these people are going out and picking up giant bundles of cash and then trading them in for Rolexes or something else stupid. There's a way to... You can't get away... You can't hide, folks. You can't hide. And if you'd like a full rectal
audit,
please be an incompetent government official, because we'll find you. We'll hold you accountable. Since we forgive, we never forget, and we hold... See, I admit when I screw up, which is why I get to call you out when you screw up. If you don't like it, I don't care if you're the president of the universe, you will be called out, thanks to all of our new viewers and users over at smashamash.com/forum. It's smashamash.com/forum. You can link to it from smashamash.org, by the way. So we've got forums on all this other stuff. We've now reached the over 1,300 users mark. And we're seeing quite a significant number of views over there. Thanks, Nebo J, for putting up the article about how bumblebees can levitate. It's by flapping their wings. But most importantly, actually not most importantly, but you may be interested in what to do on lockdown by looking up our movie recommendations. So it's in the free-for-all forum, and it's all free to view. You just need to create a login in order to post stuff, like practically every website in the universe. So shout out to Amy Vesley from Facebook. Please create a login and don't put giant lists of movies on Facebook. We're trying to put one movie at a time, not your whole list of your favorite films. But hey, it's better than nothing, so thanks for posting here. Be stoic. Putting up comic book movies, which make me want to cut my wrists. Fight Club. I love Fight Club, and I won't talk about it anymore. Maybe I'll do some reviews in the future. Next, we're on Watchers, and it's a great site, watchers.news. And there's a hurricane bearing down on Hawaii, Hurricane Douglas, as well as Hurricane Hannah, which is the first Texan hurricane landfall for about 3 years. Also, some fatal landslides showing up in Nepal 2 days ago. Let's move on and talk about where we're streaming. And we're streaming live to Twitch. It's twitch.tv/smAsho. Subscribe over there if you want to see the content immediately. Don't expect it to always be in that format, though, as we put up exclusive content on all sites. We're also on YouTube. If you're watching over there, please take a moment to press like and subscribe. And if you're viewing live in whatever capacity, just press pause. We'll be here when you get back. It's fine. It's why it's on demand. And we're one subscriber away from 200 subs on BitChute. Will you be our 200th subscriber? Will you make us reach the 1,000 views mark on the COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus cured via hydroxychloroquine video, which is, by the way, from March 23rd. Thanks to our patrons. The credit crawl's coming soon. Thanks to our latest patrons. We greatly appreciate your support, and we need lots more funding. Tell your friends, tell your foes, tell your science noobs and your science pros that we need a lot more funding to reach our goals in 2020. Again, thanks everybody over there. You are the real source of funding for the content. It's not Google AdSense, and it's not one-time donors or anything like that, but there are links to all that stuff below the video. And let's just make sure we're all right here. By the way, thanks for leaving a comment, Snitcherama. Love the name, by the way. Yes, by all means, go over and watch on YouTube. It's going to be, the title is Hurricanes, Coronal Mass Ejection Confirmed, smAsh shIrt 01, now available. Did you know? We've added new membership levels over on Patreon to allow you to go any place between $1 a month and $15 a month, so check that out if you haven't. Again, other links below the video to support the channel. And there's going to be a new one today. We'll get to it in a minute. Let's talk about the animated map of what America searched for on Google, the world's leading junkware search engine, which will absolutely not give you objective results ever. It'll give you utterly biased results. So check this one out. It's from the YouTube channel, I don't know, but it's a YouTube video. And here are the leading searches, because this is how utterly tech incompetent most people who are using Google obviously are. Why you would do a search for Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, Gmail, Google, eBay, Yahoo, Walmart, or Yahoo Mail, I have no idea. It demonstrates how utterly technically illiterate Americans are. I mean, what a joke. Why would you be searching for giant domains like Facebook, YouTube, and Amazon? That is absolutely pathetic. Plus, a lot of people Googled the word Google. Could you be any more mentally handicapped than Googling the word Google? Like, really? Oh, and by the way, stop using Google as a verb. Google is a giant scam, and to use Google as a verb does not mean to do a web search. Using Google as a verb means to do an utterly biased web search, which is in itself a pay-to-play scam, the most pathetic company in tech. It's a giant zombie wandering around with hundreds of billions of dollars at its disposal, hiring certainly more attorneys than software engineers, as their software just sucks at anything besides spying on you. If you want to see all about what Americans idiotically searched for on Google, it's shockingly stupid. Again, the top search on Google was for Facebook, and the number 5 search on Google was for the word Google. Wow! Congratulations on America. You've jumped up and down and said, look at me, I'm full of complete COVIDiots. Let's talk about China. The China virus, the Kung flu. Oh my God, it's so scary. For you! Boy, that was tough. My immune system laughs at coronaviruses, whether it's the common cold or SARS-CoV-2 or whatever the hell else you've got. LOL. I've survived a global pandemic so far. And congratulations to you on doing the same, since you're obviously watching the video. Congratulations to your ancestors. Since you exist, they've survived much worse conditions, as there's much less racism, sexism, homophobia, violence, warfare, everything but welfare. There's a lot less of all those bad things than there was in the past. So if you're all worried about strife and about how OMG America's busting into civil war, what a joke. It's a bunch of complete COVIDiots located in the cities. And if you notice, the rest of the country is quite normal. Let's talk about T cells and how scientists have uncovered there's evidence of a pre-existing immunity in the general population. Well, gee, what a surprise. Oh, who would have ever guessed that a bunch of people have had T cells that are relevant for SARS-CoV-2 for like a decade or 2 decades? Gee, who would have ever guessed? Oh, let me tell you, guys like me, COVIDiots. All right, now that I've gotten that out of my system, let's talk about solutions and real health stuff. Check out Breathology. It's literally breathology.com, BREATHEOLOGY, a website by Stig Aval Severinsen, who is a world champion in freediving. Yes, these people are quite fascinating, as they can hold their breath for like 6 minutes, and if you don't know how it works, I don't care. Breathe through your nose is my point. Why do I say this? Because of nitrogen oxide. If you weren't aware, there is a chemical reaction that happens with the nitrogen in the atmosphere when you breathe through your nose. That does not occur when you breathe through your mouth. It happens in your sinus passages. And if you know anything about nitrogen oxide, nitric oxide, well, nitric oxide gets created in your sinus passages. Now, people who are into fitness and so on may take nitric oxide supplement increasing substances, which are legal, I believe, in endurance sports to this day. And guess what? The experiment that they did here about nose breathing discovered that blood is oxygenated 10 to 15% more when you breathe through your nose. So I don't know. Did Tom Wolfe tell you about this? No. Did any government officials tell you about this? Guess. Guess. Wearing a mask makes you more inclined to breathe through your mouth because you have more air breathing volume when you don't breathe through your nose. But guess what happens? It comes out to be almost a wash, because breathing through your nose creates chemical reactions and causes nitric oxide to go directly into your blood and absorb through your sinus passages. If you want to read all about it, look up nitrogen oxide, a pleasant poison, or head to breathology.com. And shout out to Stig Aval Severinsen. We'd love to have you on the show. Drop me a line. Thanks to everybody who's been dropping me lines. Pardon my delay time. I do have the smAsho phone in my hand right now. So there you go. There's the smAsho phone. I like to use talkatone.com, and you can get a free IP phone for your smart device there. If you want to text me or give me a call, send me images or whatever, breaking news, whatever you like. Spam, we don't mind. It's an IP line. It's a VoIP phone. So it's country code 610-936-9799. That's country code 1 or +1. Area code 610-936-9799. And thanks again for everybody sending messages over there. Please identify yourself so we can add you to our contacts. as if you just send me a number, as you send me a text that I've never seen before. I have no idea who's texting me. We're on all kinds of social media, and guess what? We're advertising the first smAsho shirt. There it is. There's the link to it. It's at smashomash.locals.com. We're also on Gab. We're also on Mind.com, minds.com/smashomash. So check us out on all the social media. The links are below the video. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/smashomash. We've got a link to the t-shirt there as well. It is 1 cent less than I forecasted. I said it was going to be $25 plus shipping. Turns out it's only $24.99 plus shipping, so go over there, click on that, order yourself a shirt. If you're interested in telling people how stupid and idiotic it is to wear a mask and how pathetic and infantile mankind's response has been to SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, coronavirus, the scandemic, the pandemic, whatever the hell you want to call it today, what a pile of shit. What a joke. What a joke. And once again, I told you so. Every moron has come out of the woodwork and said, look at me, I'm an idiot, I'm an imbecile, I'm a mentally handicapped idiot, retard, moron, whatever you want to say. Hey, mankind, shove it. I've left society. Good luck without me. And yeah, so it's on Teespring, and there'll be links below the video to this. smAsho Price, my first pandemic t-shirt. $24.99 plus shipping, available in size small through 4 extra tall and 5XL. Oh, and by the way, if you order more than one, you'll save a couple bucks on shipping. It's like $6 shipping for the first shirt and $2 shipping for each additional shirt. Order some for your friends. Order some for your foes. And they probably won't know what it's about. It may require explanation, and that's part of the reason why it's there, to initiate conversations between people who are smart, people who are stupid, and people who are average. And thanks for tuning in to another Smash Light segment, part of the Daily Space Weather, typically, although make sure you subscribe to the playlist at youtube.com/smashomash/playlists, and we've got a bunch of them. We'll be adding a bunch of stuff to them. We'll be going full time and quitting my job as soon as possible. And thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Let's get back to some more space weather data. Here you can see repeated heliospheric current sheet crossings in the GOES magnetometer data. There's one, there's likely one, and there's likely another one. So this is what I was talking about with the phasing back and forth between the North and South Pole current sheets. It has to do with why those coronal mass ejections and coronal hole wind streams were as magnetically effective as they were. Here's the Gong 2 data to explain exactly what I was talking about. And you can see the way there's this gap here between the polarity, where we're not really sure what the polarity is. And that's because it's snapping back and forth, back and forth. And by the way, we could end up suddenly back in the South Pole current sheet again, although now I believe we are solidly in the North Pole current sheet. And this active region that's rising, which you can actually see the dense plasma out here associated with that likely sunspot in the north, once that becomes geo-effective, we'll be back in the South Pole current sheet again. And if you think I'm wrong, wait about 3 days and then eat your words. Here's a line of sight field plot, and you can see the B field being affected a little bit by sunspot 2767. Nothing to write home about there. Let's move on and get this video going. Here's the 1-year graph of the electron flux. This is the greater than 2 mega electron volts, courtesy of Solon.info. And we can see some pretty high levels of electron flux there, just under warning threshold, happening yesterday. And my forecast is that we'll get into warning threshold today, and it looks like we're already on our way. For you new viewers, this is the GOES 16, which measures the electron flux right at the F layer, right at the ionosphere. So these N's and M's, they mean noon and midnight local time for the satellite. That's noon, that's midnight. And typically you see a little lower level of electron flux at midnight, obviously. And let's take a visual here. And this is not where the GOES is measuring it. This is the entire air column, which is why we call it the total electron content. And you can see we don't see major anomalies like we saw yesterday. If you want to see some major anomalies in this, watch yesterday's daily space weather video. And there are playlists for that on YouTube as well, by the way. It's youtube.com/smAshomash/playlists. Hundreds and hundreds of daily space weather videos in that playlist, as well as cosmology segments, nature videos, and other things. In effect, what we're doing is we're measuring the electrons in the entire air column. So I put up this diagram here just to show you. The troposphere is the part of the atmosphere where all your weather occurs. The stratosphere is the part where people believe that there are planes flying, dropping thousands of tons of particulate on purpose, which is a capability that mankind doesn't yet have. Mesosphere is where you start to see meteorites start to experience some breakdown. And then the thermosphere is kind of the most distant shell of the atmosphere. That's sort of where the solar wind is has more of a direct effect. Now let's look at the ionosphere layer, which is just one layer within all of those. And this is where the charged particles form different three-dimensional structures. And this is what you're seeing here. These shells are different levels of pressure. And these create double and triple and quadruple and octuple layers. For instance, you see an octuple layer there at 8 megahertz. So this is looking a little more normal than it has here. And I wouldn't shut down the earthquake risk yet, especially for places where you can see major quakes. But again, the ionosphere is looking a little more normal today, and that is a good sign for those of you in earthquake-prone zones, apparently. Anyway, here's the final image, this one at 10:30 UT, and we're going a little late today, and it has to do with it being a Sunday edition. And that animation was 6 hours of data. If you haven't seen Comet Neowise yet, well, here's a wonderful image, especially of the ion tail, shown in blue. And you can see there are two separate bits of ejecta coming out of this. Something that was made famous, I think it was Comet Hyakutake, had an extreme angle, possibly giving insight into the chemical structure of the nucleus. But in any case, great image there of Comet Neowise. And this one is from Michael Yeager, once again, possibly the best comet photographer in the world, Martin Yeager. Shout out to, Michael Yeager, rather, of Martinsburg, Austria. What an amazing image. Thanks again, Snitcherama, for leaving comments. Please leave us a comment, whether you're viewing live or viewing Memorex. Here's where stuff is in the solar system, the more local stuff. And there's where things will be in a week. Looks like one day before full moon there on August 2nd. If you get up before dawn, you should be able to see Mercury, Venus, and Mars, possibly all at the same time. If you're up before sunrise, here's a weather.gov map, and we've got hurricane warnings and flash flood warnings over much of Hawaii. And by the way, this kind of stuff does lead to things like earthquakes and volcanic activity. If caldera are filled with water, that gas has to get out someplace, and it can cause more eruptions. And the low pressure systems seem to be associated with earthquakes as well. So again, if you're in an earthquake-prone zone, please have a plan to be an asset, not a liability. When buildings start to fall, and there's a distinct likelihood over the next 24 as well that may happen. You've got to go 24 hours from when the coronal mass ejection subsided. Next, we're looking at tropical tidbits. And there's where we expect the major rainfall. It looks like Texas is going to miss out on a lot of it, as the system has weakened due to dry air to its south especially. We'll show you that in a minute. So there's the expectation. Looks like there'll be a lot of coastal flooding, but not a lot of inland. And for that, we thank you. Next, looking at volcanoes. Past 24 included, have included. Current eruptions include. Current eruptions include Mount Abiko, producing a flight level of 1,000. 100. Nishinoshima, flight level 150 as it explodes. So that's an uptick at the Japanese Nishinoshima volcano. Suinuse-jima, flight level 080. 21,000 foot ash plume at Popocatépetl as it explodes. Fuego. No volcanic ash observed there. And no emissions observed at Sangay either. Please don't build campsites on the bases of those mountains, as you could be buried in a pyroclastic flow, which is not the best way to go. Revenador exploding, flight level 150 there. Sabancaya exploding, flight level 250 there. And Villarrica from central Chile possibly produced an isolated explosion. Please don't attempt to pole vault the caldera and find out, as that's not the most effective way. Fly a drone over it. Don't fly a wingsuit or a John Denver style ultralight, or you might end up like John Denver. Over the past 24 hours, we saw one earthquake over a 6 magnitude. It's on the Antarctican / Pacific plate boundary there, near the South Sandwich Islands. And that was a 6.3 magnitude quake. And that occurred at just before 1 o'clock Universal Time today. And it's July 26th. Let's go up the list. Here's a deep quake at the Solomon Islands. And it looks like a quake came in as we did the live stream. That deep quake at the Solomon Islands was a 4.8 magnitude at 127 kilometers. And let's scroll up the list here, as we don't want the video to be too long. And we don't want your t-shirt to be too long, so you may not want to buy an extra large like I did. That was just for the prototype purpose. Here's a deep quake at Fiji, and it's significant. It's a 5.4 magnitude at 566 kilometers. If that happened at the surface, that would be approximately a magnitude 7. So once again, folks, if you're in especially these areas, and you're unlikely to be in that one as it's quite sparsely populated, if you're near Cascadia or if you're near Oceania, please have a plan, because we're still on earthquake risk as a result of the coronal mass ejection strike, which is less than 24 hours old yet. And again, there was a secondary smaller strike, I believe. Let's get back to the list. And please scroll. There we go. Thank you very much. Some small earthquake activity on Hawaii. And again, low pressure cells seem to be associated. And we see a shallow quake already. Check it out. Extreme shallow quake there near Volcano, Hawaii, which is the residential the tourist neighborhood, I think it is, of Volcano. And that one, once again, we see it somewhat below the Kilauea caldera. That quake occurring at a depth of negative 1,000 meters, 1,000 meters, about 3,000 feet above sea level, which is close to the high point of Pennsylvania's altitude. Not what you would call a deep quake. There's a deep one at the Philippines, almost exactly 100 kilometers depth at a 5.2 magnitude. Here's a rare Zimbabwean earthquake at a 4.8 magnitude. Shout out to Begamon Racing. Begamon Racing on Instagram. Follow that guy. He used to ride for the Zimbabwean cycling team. He's from South Africa. And we hope to see you in town soon at Trexlertown. We'll try to organize a ride with you, Mr. Begamon. Here's a 4.2 at the Dominican Republic at depth. And let's get back to more data. Now we're looking at pressure cells, and you see that extreme low pressure system about to hit Hawaii. It's very concentrated, and it's a massive pressure gradient. It's going to be violent. And we wish everybody well down there in Hawaii. Gabby Reese, leave us a comment. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what hopefully the water's not up to your knees in your first story of your buildings. I'm sure Gabby's structures are very well made. Here's where we expect pressure cells to be at 12 noon tomorrow my time. I'm located in Lehigh Valley, and this is according to the GFS forecast on windy.com, who, by the way, has a great mobile app if you've never seen that. Here are the jet streams of the Western world, and they are all over the place, extreme in nature and quite not even meridional. They're just incoherent. And here is the Eastern world's jet stream situation. Next, we're looking at water vapor maps. This is Africa and Europe. And Please leave us a comment if you're from the dark continent of Africa, as I don't think we have any viewers from there yet. Although I think Begamon Racing has tuned in. Here is the water vapor situation for the Far East and Oceania. Here's the lightning map situation, and again, shout out to our patrons. Thanks again for being the real source of funding for the content and increasing the probability that the videos will continue to exist. One of our benefits for our patrons yesterday is we put up a screenshot of lightning maps. We like to use lightningmaps.org, or if you prefer, and you know German, blitzortung.org. Good times. And shout out to all of our Euro viewers. We've got some daytime lightning happening here. Let's check it out. Hey Laona. Hey Crandon. Those aren't very interesting places. How about Minneapolis? That's an interesting place. Please leave a comment if you're from Minneapolis and you've decided to burn buildings down. Leave us a comment and please link to your local police force. Next, looking at the water vapor map for the Americas. And there is a system about to rocket through the South Atlantic. We won't talk about it any more than citing that it's going to rocket through the South Atlantic. And it won't be a rocket, although Mr. MBB333 and what's her name? Gina Maria Colher is going to find spaceships in the clouds, make thousands of dollars per month through Google AdSense. And check it out, we got some major storms here in places besides Texas. Let's check it out. Let's zoom in on Minnesota, as there's a double convergence happening. There's two different systems combining and causing strife. And we will zoom in on South Texas as well here. And shout out to our Texan viewers. Shout out to all of our viewers. Shout out to our friends. Shout out to our foes. Again, there's some dry air south of that, and that's making for a better time for you. Here's the cloud situation. We'll zoom in real quick on the southern tip of Texas. There's the cloud situation. Here's the water vapor situation. And by the way, those systems in Minnesota are going to stagnate because they're being blocked by a bunch of dry mass of air. And it looks like that hurricane has dried up. I mean, has moistened up all the dry air that was south of it. And that's probably going to cause it to stagnate. Let's zoom in on that area and move on, as we are almost through with the daily space weather. We try not to be too spaced out and know what our own weather is. And that's actually broken into two systems here. It looks like two separate low pressures. And the counterclockwise rotation is continuing, but not very strongly. And there's the image in water vapor. Water vapor, clouds, and that's the NASA GOES interactive weather satellite shortwave, which is 3.9 nanometers, channel 7. So there's some great images of the current situation. Looks like Texas is going to be largely spared from the major rainfall, which is going to only mainly strike Mexico. There should be some 20-inch sections of rain. And shout out to Eden Uldu. Thanks, Kimberly, for leaving a comment. Thanks, Smash Team. Please don't forget to share the content on your social media. Please tell your friends, tell your foes, tell your science noobs and your science pros. Order up a t-shirt. And thanks for flying, American Smashways. Please keep your head and arms inside the Smash plane at all times. Here's the latest intensity gram of Sunspot 2767, which has now become beta class as a result of that little tiny umbra. Don't expect any major fireworks out of it, but it's more likely to produce flares and coronal mass ejections as a result of that trailing umbra. And you can see there that it is indeed North Pole oriented, shown in blue. Let's do one final series of images here, courtesy of the SDO. The 94 angstroms wavelength shows a little bit more data, as it takes 10 images per minute instead of only 2. If you haven't checked out the websites, like patreon.com/smAsho, consider becoming a patron, please. Consider funding us, as we need to eat. And funding's tasty. smAshomash.org. We may have to eat the local government. We're hoping not, because it probably is very untasty. But smAshomash.com/forum is just delicious. Anyway, here's the 48-hour SDO video in 94 angstroms. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. No matter how much the government drives you to drink, don't drink and drive. And since it'll never be now again, welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Order yourself a t-shirt. And may that solar wind be at your back and that covidiously absent from your neighborhood, county, state, nation, hemisphere, continent, planet, solar system, galaxy, universe, multiverse.